Let's kick it.
Yeah, we out of house, yo, kick it!
Kick it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of American Soccer Quick Kicks. I'm your host, David Wright. Do me a favor real quick. Hit the subscribe button. Do wonders for my self-esteem. I'm not going to spend any time talking about the two matches that the U.S. just played this past week because they don't mean anything and they were mostly kind of boring. I hope no one paid money for HBO Max just to watch a 0-0 game between United States and Colombia on Saturday night. The only thing I'll say about it, I'm going to spend any time talking about it because it just doesn't matter. But I will point out that the only goal scored for the U.S. across these two matches was from Brandon Vazquez, from a cross by Julian Gressel, the two Atlanta players that I told you to keep an eye on. So I feel pretty good about that. And Vazquez, I thought, really has been a shining star this past week for the United States. He's probably the only one that really is separating himself from the pack. And we might see him in some real matches with the real team in the future. So Brandon Vazquez, we desperately needed a number 9, and he delivered in this window in his first opportunity, and so that's going to be an important position for someone to step up into. And right now, he's looking pretty strong. So keep an eye on Brandon Vazquez for the future. Anyway, just a little bit I want to go over. A lot is happening in U.S. soccer. There's actually we're in the middle of a shakeup, a complete shakeup in leadership at U.S. Soccer, but I don't think casual fans are going to care about that as much as U.S. Soccer fans are going to care about it. So I'll touch on it a little bit at the end of this, but the first thing I want to do is talk about the competitions, because I think this is something casual fans will be a little bit more interested in. I want to go over a little bit, what are the different competitions that the U.S. team plays in. I mentioned Nations Cup and Gold Cup in the last video, and I had somebody ask me, what are those things? And so I want to kind of slow down a little bit and kind of walk you through that. Obviously, the World Cup is the biggie. It's every 4 years. That 4-year cycle of the World Cup is what everything on the international soccer calendar revolves around. So we are at the beginning of a brand new World Cup cycle right now. And so what happens in between times? There's 3 years of no World Cup happening before the next one. Well, 2 of those years typically is full of World Cup qualifying matches. Unless you're a host nation and you don't have to qualify, then you don't have those matches. So, but usually, sometimes you'll hear the entire World Cup tournament referred to as the World Cup Finals, and that's because it's the culmination of a 2-year qualification process. What else happens? Well, the next big thing, the biggest thing the U.S. has left is the Gold Cup. This is our Confederations Championship, okay? It's almost funny to say this, but you can basically think of it as like a CONCACAF only version of the World Cup. It's an international competition, meaning it's played by national teams, but it's only for our region, North Central America and the Caribbean. Every confederation in the world has their version of this tournament. You may have heard of the Euros or the European Championships. That, of course, is the biggest one. It's like a European-only version of the World Cup. That's what the Euros are. South America has the Copa America. It's probably the second most prestigious one. And all the other confederations, okay, so Africa, Asia, Oceania, they all have their version of this. And for CONCACAF, it's Gold Cup. So we do have that going on, but here's the thing. The Gold Cup is not very prestigious at all because we don't have a lot of great teams in our region. If the best you have to offer is US and Mexico, maybe Canada, and you see where they rank in the world, you see how they perform at the World Cup, it's like the rest of the world doesn't take it too seriously. And even the Gold Cup that was played, we didn't use our best players in it. So, but it's the best that we have, right? It's what we have. We're CONCACAF, we have the Gold Cup. The other thing that happens is called Nations League. And this is still relatively new. And what this is, we take FIFA windows. Okay, so the national team is not always in session. There's only certain international windows in the calendar designated by FIFA where the national teams can convene and their clubs are obligated to let the players go if they're called in, if they're called into camp. And so there's only a few weeks out of the year in the individual windows where international matches are going to be played. And what they've come up with is this new thing called the Nations League, where you basically are playing a league table against other national teams in your confederation, and you play these inside the international windows. So what this does is it has us playing a lot fewer friendly matches, and that means a lot more competitive matches where there's actually something at stake. That's great. It does take away opportunities to play bigger South American or European nations that perhaps we prefer to be playing. But I do think it's a net positive for CONCACAF. It probably benefits the smaller nations more than it does the big dogs in the region. So there's a lot of really small like island nations and things that never qualify for larger tournaments, and they end up not playing very many matches in a year. Nations League kind of lets them do that, and it has it tiered so that they're playing their competitive peers, and there's actually vertical movement between tiers based on Nations League results, and then for the next iteration, the assignment and where you go in those tiers is modified. Anyway, the United States won the the Nations League in 2021, and we're getting ready to start playing in it again. Nations League matches will be taking place in the next window in March. So the Nations League is not as prestigious as the Gold Cup. The stakes aren't as high. They, in fact, they are a feeder tournament to the Gold Cup. How you do in Nations League determines whether or not you qualify, or at least it is a path for qualification to the Gold Cup. So that's what the United States, outside of the World Cup, those are the things the U.S. competes for. Nations League and then Gold Cup. And we have Nations League matches happening this year. To be honest, I don't know when it culminates, when that championship's going to be. It's not going to be in March or June, I know that. But the Gold Cup is going to be this summer, and the Gold Cup is higher than the Nations League. So here's the thing: I told you in the last episode, we weren't going to have qualification matches, and that kind of makes the U.S. manager's job a little less appealing because there won't be as many competitive matches. Yes, we have the Gold Cup. Yes, we have the Nations League. But those aren't very prestigious. They're not high stakes, and we needed more. Like these next 3 years before we get to the World Cup in 2026, they were going to be kind of flat, and we need to be getting better. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to attract a top name? And I don't know any of those answers yet. Nobody does. But something has happened to help bolster our calendar for these intermittent years before the next World Cup. And this is actually huge news. This is what I wanted to get to. So in South America, the South American Confederation is called CONMEBOL. We're CONCACAF, they're CONMEBOL. Don't ask me, I'm not the one that made it up. But CONMEBOL is more, I guess, respected than CONCACAF is, primarily because they have both Brazil and Argentina at the top of their confederation. However, it's very small. Where CONCACAF has over 40 nations in it, CONMEBOL only has 10, and that's not even enough for a proper tournament. So for them to have their version of the Gold Cup, right? Their version of the Euros. This is called Copa America. This is the South America only version of the World Cup, if you will. The Copa America usually invites other teams from around the world into their tournament, into their Confederation Championship tournament, because they need to fill out the field for a proper bracket. Like I said, there's only 10 nations in CONMEBOL. So guess what's happened? They've entered into an agreement. CONMEBOL and CONCACAF have entered into an agreement that 6 CONCACAF nations will play in the 2024 Copa America. This is huge, and this will do a lot to bolster our calendar and to make our team, the job of managing the team, more appealing to some bigger names. So this is really good, and we're going to be playing competitive matches that outside of CONCACAF, and I think this is all going to be very, very important. It's very, very positive. So that's excellent that we're going to be playing, that CONCACAF will be participating in Copa America. All of the matches will be played in the United States. The United States is going to host the entire tournament. Here's a catch. The United States will not automatically qualify for this tournament, despite the fact that they are the host. They must qualify. How are they going to qualify? Their qualification will depend on how they finish in Nations League. I guess they're trying to prop that up a little bit, trying to make it worth a little bit more. So take back what I said before. Now that qualifying for Copa America is going to depend on Nations League, now there's some real stakes. And really, that kind of puts more on the line for Nations League than even playing in the Gold Cup. And so it's all kind of twisted and mixed up, and Gold Cup should be on top, and then you got this happening. It's kind of stupid. But anyway, here's the catch though. We don't have a manager. Nations League play starts in March. We have key games in June. We don't have not only do we not have a manager, and this ties into what I teased at the beginning of the video, we're in the middle of a shakeup of leadership. Okay, the sporting director, who's the top position on the sporting side of U.S. soccer, Ernie Stewart, he has resigned and he has left to take a job in the Netherlands, which is where he grew up. Brian McBride was the men's team general manager. He has also stepped away on his own. He informed U.S. Soccer of that before the World Cup. They asked him to stick around till after. And Berhalter's contract expired. And so we don't have a sporting director, a general manager, or a manager. And who knows when any of those are going to be filled. And we're at the very beginning of a brand new World Cup cycle that is not just any old World Cup cycle. We're hosting, and we have a golden generation that's maturing. This is perhaps the most important cycle we've ever had. And right now we are leaderless and rudderless. And we need to get into Copa America. But they've already said, U.S. Soccer has already said that they don't expect to hire a manager until maybe late summer, early fall, which is going to be past. It's going to be beyond all these Nations League games that are being played in the spring and early summer. So, because they want to hire a sporting director first, they may not even fill the position of GM. They may do a whole reorganization of everything, but they're going to hire the sporting director first before they worry about trying to find the manager. And so we're going to be playing games that are critical to our future in this cycle without a manager. And that's a huge deal in soccer, because until we have the permanent guy in place, we can take nothing from the results of the matches. We can't evaluate what we're going to look like going forward, because any coach that comes in is going to instill his own tactics, his own style of play, and want to pick his own players. And there's really no reason, it's impossible to glean anything from matches that are played in the interim and be able to project forward of what that means for our future. It's nothing. We're treading water until we have a manager in place. 2018 was a lost year for us because we took our time until the MLS season was over to hire Greg Berhalter, and now 2023 is looking like it's also going to be a lost year. And we have some critical now, because of Copa America. Nations League matches are suddenly critical, and we don't know we're not going to have a permanent manager. So this is not good. Welcome to U.S. soccer fandom. There's always a reason for angst. The interim manager that we have is Anthony Hudson. He was on Berhalter's staff. Last time he had a head coaching job was he was coaching the Colorado Rapids, and he did terrible. He did awful. They fired him before the season was over, and on his way out, he said he had terrible players and nobody could win with those players. And then the interim coaches that took over proceeded to take that team to the verge of the playoffs. So he's not a name that's going to fill me with confidence. We need to fill those positions quickly. But here we go. All right. So but there's the summary. Nations League, in theory, Nations League at the bottom, then Gold Cup, and now suddenly Copa America. We do not automatically qualify for Copa America. We actually have to do well in Nations League to qualify. So somehow we got to be able to do it without proper leadership in place. So welcome to 2023, U.S. soccer fans. I'll keep you in touch with all that. That's going to do it. I'm trying to keep these episodes shorter. In the very next episode, I'm going to come back and go over all the various competitions that Major League Soccer clubs compete in. That's one of the great things about the league, about the sport really, is that every club has multiple trophies they can go for every single year. And I'm going to kind of explain those and break those down for you in the very next episode. In the meantime, watch some soccer with me, and I'll talk to you next time.